You're live streaming.
Good evening, everybody. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence for Robert Gillespie, retired WC teacher, and Ralph Gaston, a former John Jay varsity football and baseball coach. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of
America,
and to
and
the
to
republic
republic
with the
for
stand
which it stands, one nation,
under God,
under God, indivisible,
with
with liberty
and
and
justice.
justice for all.
Thank you. 4.01, public comments on agenda items. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to listen to the public comment. Although state does not require us to hold public comment period, we have chosen to do so because we believe it is crucial for us to hear from our community members about their concerns and issues. The board is here to listen. The public comment period is not designed to be a debate or dialogue. Please do not expect the board to respond to your concerns or questions tonight. We take your concerns and questions seriously and want to have sufficient time to process and research issues, if need be. Any question from the public should be submitted to the use of the public form, which may be obtained online or at the desk with the district clerk. We will have the proper staff member get back to you as appropriate. I also want to point out that under state and federal privacy law, we are unable to address any comments or questions about specific students or school personnel. We should ask you to go through your proper administrative channels. A total of 30 minutes at the beginning of each board meeting is set aside to allow for public comment on agenda items only. Public comments at the beginning of the meeting is limited only to items on the agenda. Persons who wish to participate in public comments portion of the meeting are asked to provide their name and a specific agenda item about which they wish to speak. Individual comments on agenda items are limited to 3 minutes and are welcomed. If you wish to address items related to a school district that are not on tonight's agenda, another comment period is provided at the end of the meeting for that purpose. In the interest of civility and respect for different points of view, clapping, booing, or any disturbance or disruption during either public comment period is not permitted. At this point, Alberta, do you have any public comments that the board should hear?
Board members, I do have some public comments, but they are not on agenda items. So
Okay,
I'll
okay.
read them later.
Okay, with that being said, any communications, announcements received by the Board of Education? Anyone? Had any communications? Well, I got a lot of them, so please be patient. I want to congratulate the girls and boys basketball team of RCK for being the 2022 league champions. Congratulations to RCK Sebastian Smith for qualifying for 8 swimming events for the state tournament. Congratulations to RCK Abby Kowalczyk for her performance in a Class AA meet in a 1,000-meter run with a time of 3:02.25, becoming a New Balance qualifier. Another RCK's New Balance qualifier is Nick Castorina for his time of 1.24 minutes to 0.2 seconds in a 600-meter run. Congratulations to RCK Haley Aruda, who qualified for the 114 running of the Milrose Games in the weight throw. Congratulations to John Scampoli, who broke the RCK school record in the weight throw with a mark of 43 feet, 4.5 inches. In wrestling, congratulations to first place winners Alex Ratburn, Matt Marsh, Gavin McLaughlin, who won that division and will advance to sectionals. Second place winners were Dylan Glickman, Noel Martinez, and third place winners Eddie Corcoran, Mike Monte, and Joanna Usher will also advance to sectionals. And for the John Jay, a lot of announcements for John Jay. Congratulations to both the boys and the girls bowling teams for being league champions and advance to the sectionals. Congratulations to Shannon Fitzpatrick for qualifying for the states in floor exercise. Congratulations to John Jay swimmers Steve Holland, Dustin Perillo for qualifying for the New York State Swim Meet. In track and field, congratulations to Amelia Guzman, sectional champ in a 1,500-meter run. Emma Egan, Peyton Matesino, Elizabeth Toth, and Amelia Guzman for being the 3,200-meter champs. Mia Perillo, sectional champ for the pole vault. Girls team for being cross county champs. In wrestling, Logan Moe, who won his division and will advance to the sectionals. Evan Prine places in the divisional and will advance to the sectionals. Isabel DeMillo placed at the divisionals and advanced to the sectionals. Ben Hewitt placed in divisional and advanced to the sectionals. Congratulations to Robert Zhu for being nominated for the United States Presidential Scholarship. As you all know, there was a science Olympiad at John Jay High School this past weekend, where numerous schools participated. Numerous students in our district took first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh place in different categories. They're still in the process of compiling all the names, so when they are, it will be posted on the district webpage. However, we must congratulate the John Jay Science Olympiad team for taking second place and will returning for the second year to the New York State Championships. I want to thank the teachers who mentor all the students. Last but not least, I want to thank the whole professional staff for their work with the second graders at Fishkill Elementary who participated in a project-based learning experience, which included math, science, technology, and English language arts. The students created a 17-hole mini golf course. Students are learning from math measurements to create the footprint for each mini golf hole. They use science properties of matter to create obstacles and design their golf course hole. They use technology, including robotics and a 3D printer. Finally, the students had to create a written reflection about their learning experience. The students I observed were very enthusiastic and seemed to love creating their designs. I sincerely hope that the professional developers can be expanded to their work to many other schools possible to create project-based learning, which in my opinion is essential to today's education. We are very fortunate as a district to have such professional developers not only help our students, but who together with teachers create opportunities for students to learn. I'm sorry for taking so long.
I want to, John, President Lumi, I wanted to add to congratulate the elementary school musicians and chorus for the first time. The fifth graders, they had an opportunity to perform. And for the sixth graders, they couldn't perform last year because of COVID. So this is their first time performing. And it was great to see that the performing arts program is really doing well. There's a lot of kids participating, and we hope to see more in during the spring concerts.
Thank you very much, Mr. Odoms. Anyone else? That being said, committee report, Capital Improvement Committee, great job done, Mr. Schlesauer. It's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Lumia. We're just combining the last two meetings. Most of the discussion was repetitive for those two meetings. I'm just going to go through them real quick. First off, with Myers Corners Playground, hopefully the ship has arrived for the missing climbing structure. Obviously, the weather is not conducive for the kids to go out. So thankfully, by the time the weather warms up, we'll have the climbing structure delivered and installed, and we can cross that project off our list. I just want to thank the Myers Corners community again, as I always do, for their patience. But these were unforeseen circumstances, with the containers stuck in the Pacific. The other thing that we had decided to take a look at and have conversations was upgrading both John Jay and RCK sports field sound systems. We're doing some investigating on that, and hopefully we'll have some more information within the next 1 to 2 meetings to share with everybody. Also, just to touch base back on our somewhat bigger project that we've had numerous conversations with Felonzer Engineering. Just to remind everyone here tonight and the community, we're in review with them for the possibility of installing some upgrades to the HVAC, which obviously would give all buildings the ability to have air conditioning. It is not an easy process. I'm not trying to get political here, but when we have politicians go on TV and say, money was sent to schools to upgrade HVAC systems and air conditioning and ventilation for buildings, it is not as easy as they make it sound. It is a tremendous, tremendous undertaking. And Trustee McFarland, I think, could agree with me and share that insight with anyone who has, some real deep questions on that. But it is a project that the committee is seriously looking at. It is something that we want to have installed in all the buildings. We're looking at 6 of the schools right now. We also have the vendor and Mr. Bross heading out to White Plains School District. They have a system already in place. The committee wanted to get a better understanding of how the system works from a school district that's already utilizing, either a chilled water system or a geo exchange system. Not exactly sure what they have down there, but they're going to head on down and do some due diligence and bring back to the committee. So I know this is something that the community has wanted for a very long time. I just asked for your patience. It is something we're acknowledging. We do want to do something for all the buildings to make it better for staff, faculty, students, and workers when it does get very hot in May and June, obviously for summer school, and can just continue to upgrade the buildings. Just keep in mind, these buildings were built 50, 60, 70 years ago. Just a lot of moving parts, but it is something that we're going to be working on, and we will continue to update everybody as we get some more information. The other thing, we also had some conversations. If you remember, several months ago, we had the heavy rains and John Jay boiler room had flooded. So we're looking into installing sump pumps in order to alleviate that problem and do some other work so that situation doesn't happen again. Again, it's an older area, that part of the building, and just the way the water flows when it comes down like that, the water comes, unfortunately, towards the building and not away from the building. So it's obviously something that we have to address. And then on with some good news on the Phase 4 projects. Those architectural plans are up at SED for review. Hopefully within the next 8, 10, no more than 12 weeks, we'll have our approval. Then we can go out to bid, and then the Phase 4 projects will be completed over the summer and ready for school when, ready when school reopens in September. Thank you.
Thank you to board members Marie Johnson, Ms. McFarland, and who else on that committee? Marie, of course, myself, and who's the other person?
Ron Broas.
Mr.
Mr. Bross, and we have 2 community members. We have Cheryl Miggets as well as Michael Gillespie.
Again, Eddie did a great job along with the board members. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eddie, for that
Peggy,
report.
You're welcome.
Peggy Kelland, Policy Committee report.
Committee met twice in the recent weeks. On January 19th, we continued our 3-year review of public policies relating to purchasing and transportation. We required updating of the cell phone, the credit card policies because of changes in technology. And the policies as written didn't reflect current technology. The other changes were all merely matters of grammar, and you can see them in the second reading of policies. Then on February 2nd, we continued the 3-year review, addressing especially safety policies in the schools, which did not need many changes. The attendance zone policies was changed to include the federal law, and the learning standards to include state policy. The updating of the student course loads was to better reflect grading periods and give more opportunity for students to bring up their grades before dropping the course. That is on the first reading. So the February 2nd policies are on first reading. Yes, Mr. McFarland.
Michael, you have a quick question? Michael?
Peggy, do you know when the safety committee is going to meet?
No, but I'm sure Mr. Lokema will. He's on that committee. He chairs
Okay.
it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy, along with the members of the committee, Mr. Morgan and to Eddie Schleichauer. Community Communication Committee, Marie Johnson.
Yes, the Community Communications Committee met on December 15th. We welcomed our 2 new community members. Actually, no, we have 3 new community members. And we reviewed the 2 websites that last year's committee spent most of the year reviewing and studying so that we could get the community members and everybody up to date. And we did with our consensus after reviewing the two websites yet again. We were in unanimous decision that we chose a very good one last year. Mr. Lokima and Miss C have started implementing the changeover on the website. Many of you might have noticed if you've gone on the main computer one, the changes. Please be patient. Miss C and Mr. Lokima are working diligently to try. There's a lot of work in cleaning it and switching over the system. So the data is going to be updated. There's a lot of tweaking and moving stuff around, and it's still in a work in progress. But once it is up and fully running and ready to go, Mr. Lokima is going to give us all a wonderful overview of it. And I'm very, very excited. It's a very user-friendly one. There is some adjustments from the way the old site worked, but it is so much cleaner and so much nicer, and I believe everybody will be very happy. We are in the process of setting another date for the new committee meeting, hopefully the end of the month. And as soon as we get that, it will be out for the public. Do you want me to just go right into audit?
Let me make a comment. First of all, I think I'll commend Marie Johnson for the work that she does on that committee. I'm talking about the Community Communication Committee. Without her help, nothing would get done. So thank you very much, Marie.
Thank you,
Go
Mr.
right into the audit committee if you like.
Thank you, everyone. Yes, on January 24th, we had our audit meeting that we are required to have. We reviewed our tracking sheets, which I have to say, as always, we are completely up to date. I love Miss Crandall to death. She always keeps us on track, as well as Miss Pedro. We had a report from RBT for our internal risk assessment. And Ms. Crandall already had a corrective action plan in the works and going, which will be presented later this evening. And as usual, she's 2 steps ahead of us. Before we even hear about it, she's already working on fixing anything that comes up. And I just don't know how we do it without her. Also, we discussed some of our agreed upon procedures, which is every year. This is through our Bonadillo group, which we do every year. This is the external audit committee or audit group that we use. And that will be done. And then the next meeting, I believe, is in, I can't remember. I want to say March, but I'm not 100% sure. And we will get that date out. I know it's usually posted on the website. And that's my meeting.
As Marie stated, Christian's always on top of everything. There's nothing that
Very
gets
much
by her.
so.
She's incredible. Thank God she's on our staff.
Yes. Oh,
Next
Mr.
up-
Lumia, there's one person that we forgot to acknowledge on our capital committee that has been making a huge difference, and that would be Dr. Bonk. He has
Dr.
really
Bonk
been
always
able to
makes
give us
Dr.
some
Bonk always makes good
input
suggestions.
here.
Along
I'm
with Dr. Lokima,
excited to say
absolutely.
Dr. Bonk has been attending our committee meetings, and it's been huge having his input because he's giving us the head of the district's ideas.
Thank you. I enjoy the opportunity. Thank you.
Absolutely. And with that, Wellness Committee, Ms. Crandall.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Ms. Johnson, just so you know, it's in June. The next audit committee meeting is in June. It's far out because we've already met 3 times this year. However,
Okay, thank you.
No problem. This evening, we would just like to go over what the District Wellness Committee discussed at the January 12th meeting. It was a virtual meeting. The big topic was our surveys. Annually, we are required to put out surveys. We do a survey to students as well as to the families. The committee does great work, especially as homework, and I really appreciate all the work that is done by that group. The surveys have been sent out, reviewed by the committee. We've updated them. They're being reviewed by the committee again. We will meet in March, and we plan to have these surveys sent out late March, early April, once the committee decides on those dates. So again, our next meeting will be March 16th. Thank you.
John, you're muted, John.
Muted.
You're still muted.
It looks like Dr. Cardwell is
Dr.
up
Caldwell,
next.
Dr. Caldwell, please. I'm sorry that I was muted.
Good evening, everyone. The
Good evening.
Curriculum Committee met on January 12th. We had the pleasure of viewing two presentations that were very informative. The first presentation was by Director Bonnie King. She presented the new course offerings from the languages other than English department. The courses that are being presented to the Board of Education for their approval on tonight's agenda is the Advanced Spanish 3 for the Heritage and Native Speaker, and also Dutch Community College French 201 and 202. I'm very excited about those opportunities. The second presentation was by Director Art Shouden. He gave a presentation along with some members of the technology department, and he presented on the technology courses and offerings at our junior high school and high school level. And we're looking at creating additional opportunities for our students at Wappingers Junior High School to mirror that which is being offered at Van Wyck Junior High School.
Eddie?
Thank you, Dr. Caldwell. I just wanted to bring something up since you were presenting. I'd like to make a suggestion / recommendation for you to bring to the committee at your next meeting. If you could explore the possibility of establishing a mental health class where it would start in the junior highs at somewhat of an introductory as part of their health. I know I'm not exactly sure. I know it's not the full year, but I know at some point at junior high, they do spend some time with a health class with some type of introduction, and then carried over as a requirement. Believe it or not, I would ask for as a requirement for graduation. Students would receive credit, and that way, they could learn more about depression, anxiety, eating disorders, and other types of mental disorders. And also learn about coping skills and ways to ask for help. I think the way we're going now with what we need to deal with because of what has transpired with COVID for the last couple of years, I think it would be our best practice that we get as much involved as we can with the kids in educating them on how to deal with certain disorders and certain things. We've got a lot of things going on within the community, with drug addiction and so forth. But we need to be looking at some other things, especially from a mental health standpoint. And I just would like to ask you to, consider this with the committee and see if there's something, that we could get established, obviously, for maybe for starting in September. Again, I don't know, you'd have to speak with Kristen and Dr. Bonk budget-wise, if there'd be any additional cost. I don't know if our existing teachers would have the areas of expertise, to conduct these classes. But I think it's something that we should consider moving forward. So if you could just bring it up for conversation and discussion with the curriculum committee for some, their feedback and their thoughts and their ideas on adding this as a potential, high school required course, or at least as part of the curriculum within their health class. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Just my own curiosity, Dr. Caldwell, are the present classes in health cover any of those? I think it's a good idea what Eddie has, but do we cover some of those topics right now in those classes?
Yes, the majority of those topics are already covered in our current health classes. What we can do is we can get a presentation from the health department that we have here in staff and look to see at what level each is discussed and see if we might need to modify what we are currently teaching.
Great idea. Okay,
Thank you,
Eddie.
Dr. Caldwell, just for that clarification. Yeah, I'm really just asking, if ways just to step that up. If we already have something in place, that's fantastic. But I think if, we can focus, and I know it's like, it's half a semester or it's 2 weeks or whatever, again, I don't want to have it a student spending the entire year, on this particular subject, but obviously if we can somehow improve on what we have already, I think that would only be more beneficial for the students in the community. Thank you
Yeah,
again.
trustee Sloshow, I'd like to note that we've had considerable conversations with our local elected officials, community-based organizations, mental health professionals about ways in which they can assist us in our schools. Clearly, the last 2 years has been very difficult on all of us. We're seeing students not only having academic issues, but social and emotional issues as well. And it's incumbent upon us to provide our students with the services that they need to ensure that they understand what they're going through and they are given the necessary information as to how to cope, how to improve, and how to work on whatever issue that they may be dealing with, that we provide them as a school district with supports. And as I indicate the preliminary budget shortly, you will see that those items are included in there, but your point is well taken and well needed. We will continue to work in that direction. We already have people in the community throughout the county that are doing this type of work. We need to leverage our resources and bring them into the schools. And that's what we'll do.
You're muted, John.
You're still
Still
muted.
muted.
John.
John, you're still muted. So the next person up looks like it's Miss Kellen for the Dutchess County School Boards
Johnny
Association.
muted, pain in the neck. Okay, you're right. Dutchess County School Board Association, Miss Kellen, you can do both presentations.
Yes.
New York State School Board, Capital Conference, and so forth. Okay, do both of them at the same time.
All right, the Dutchess County School Boards Association met on January 6th. The guest speakers were our own law firm speaking on contract negotiations around the county. Very informative. And Dr. Bunk presented about the Test to Stay program that Wappingers pioneered in Dutchess County. And I'd like to thank Dr. Bunk for attending most of the Dutchess County School Boards Association meetings. Whenever he can, he comes, and he's one of the handful of superintendents who are faithful attendees. So thank you very much. Then on February 4th, we had two presentations, one by the Community Foundation about scholarships that are available. And this is very important for families to know. There are a number of scholarships that students can apply for from different schools, from in different subject areas, different interests, different backgrounds. But you can register there. There's a simple original questionnaire, and then they will help you. They have staff to help you figure out what you're eligible for and what you can get. Some of those scholarships are not awarded some years because nobody applied. So this is a wonderful opportunity. The scholarships range from $500 to $3,000. And although most are just for freshman year, some of them can be renewed each of 4 years. And as anybody who has had to pay for college knows, every little bit helps. So, if you can get a scholarship, not have to borrow some more money, that's wonderful. And the other group presenting was the Bard Early College, which is at BOCES. This program allows students who want to get into college work early to spend half their day in their regular high school, like any BOCES program, and half at BOCES, taking college level courses taught by Bard College. And they pointed out that they would like to offer even more variety of courses, but they need students. So if some students would like to do that, and the credits that they earn are accepted at all SUNY colleges. So that would give you a head start on college credits and at most other colleges also. Then the New York State School Boards Association had their annual Capitol Conference last Wednesday. And we had very good presentations this year. I thought they were all excellent. First by the State Education Department by Commissioner Betty Rosa and her deputy Jim Baldwin, discussing about the executive budget. Happily this year, due to the COVID relief funding and the unexpectedly good tax revenues in New York State, they're able to give us more money instead of cutting, which is a good thing. And they are increasing what's called foundation aid, which is a very complicated formula, but basically all school districts will get an increase this year, a sizable increase. Then she was followed by Carolyn by the NISBA staff discussing the different aspects of each part of the executive budget. And then by Dan Fuller, who was representing the governor's office. And finally by Shelley Mayer, the chair of the Senate Education Committee, and John Liu, her vice chair. And if anything, the legislators said they wanted to give us more money than the governor proposed, which is very nice. We will see what actually happens, but it was a much more hopeful presentation than most years. Then we're going to be having this Wednesday what they call Lobby Day. Unfortunately, because of COVID, it's going to be virtual, but our Dutchess County School Boards Association Executive Director, Kelly Lappin, is setting up meetings for us with all our legislators. So I will be attending those and discussing the items which we would like to see especially. And I spoke with Dr. Bonk so that we will be on the same page about what Wappinger School District specifically would like to see done. And then on Thursday, there's going to be a webinar from the state on curriculum development, which should be quite interesting. The one good thing that has come out of COVID, is that they have been able to provide us with free webinars to all school board members on a number of topics that we have been able to do. So I'm looking forward to that. Thank you.
Mr. Lumia, you're muted, but you're muted again. But real quick, can I just say that, remind everybody that tomorrow night is the Legislative Action Committee. I'm just letting you know in case anybody wanted to come.
Thank you, Marie. I think I'm unmuted now. 5.01, preliminary budget presentation. Dr. Bunk, you have the floor. You're muted, Dr. Bunk.
Thank you very much, President Lumia, Vice President Kellen, members of the Board of Education, senior staff administration, faculty, staff, and members of the Wappinger Central School District learning community. But when I took this position in October of 2020, one of the things that I stated was that we were going to be totally transparent about how we function as a school district. One of the ways that we can do that is through our budget process, which has changed somewhat than what it has been over the previous years. But what I'm going to do this evening is I'm going to provide you a preliminary budget and provide an opportunity for some discussion. What I can tell you is this preliminary budget, which is not the recommended budget, but it will be very close to the recommended budget, is historic in nature. And the fact that for the first time since the inception of the tax cap in 2012, 2013, the superintendent will not be making a recommendation that we go right up to the tax cap. We believe that we will be able to continue to provide the necessary services and programs that our students need and deserve, as well as be fiscally responsible to the taxpayers of this district. I'll take a few minutes to explain where we are in that regard. And then as we go down the line within the coming weeks and get closer to the budget, I will have an opportunity to present the superintendent's recommended budget, which is basically the district recommended budget that I will present to the board. So with that, connecting with our community preliminary budget discussion, Board of Education members, President John Lumia, Vice President Peggy Kellen, Trustee Carrie Cahill, Trustee Marie Johnson, Trustee Michael McFarland, Trustee John Morgan, Trustee Keith Odoms, Trustee Eddie Sloshower, and Trustee James Spencer. I'd like to thank all of you for your support. What I'm going to be presenting this night is not my wish list. This is a wish list that is combined of information that the community believes is important for our students, that our faculty and staff believes is important for our students, that our Board of Education believes is important for our students, the senior staff administration believes is important for our students. So if we can move on to the next slide. Keywords that you'll hear me refer to in the budget process. What is the budget? It's the district spending. It's a balance of revenues and expenses. What is the tax levy? The amount received by the district in property taxes. State aid, the amount received from fiscal year 2023, the governor's executive budget proposal, which we now have. Other revenue, other financial resources that we receive at the local level. And assigned fund balance, the amount intended for specific use assignment for the district to reduce the burden on the taxpayer. So how do we derive this preliminary budget? Well, we use estimates because we don't have the final numbers at this point. So we develop projected budgets based on feedback, as I indicated, from our community vendors, departmental historical data, municipal input, what we value as a community. We look at the stability of our economic markets, debt service rates, health insurance contribution rates, New York State retirement system rate of returns, and the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. Administrative offices and schools, initial local proposals and requests, again, maintaining high quality student-centered programs and highly qualified staff. Board of Education, central office administration, we get feedback, and also governance and decision-making. We work collaboratively together to derive a final recommended budget. We can move to the next page. So what are some of the challenges that we face? Well, first of all, the budget deadline is April 1st of 2022 for aid finalization, just a couple months away. We need to balance the social and emotional health supports for our students and staff, and we need to continue to personalize the educational experience for each and every one of our students by maintaining appropriate staffing levels to ensure that our students get the assistance that they needed, especially now in times that have been most challenging. Maintain our current educational program, continue to support our academic supports, academic enrichment, extracurricular activities, as well as professional development for staff. We are seeing students that are returning to us after the remote learning that, again, was not something that we chose. It was something that we were forced to do. We did the best we could with it. It was not optimal. We are seeing our students coming back to our schools this year. They are suffering academically, socially, and emotionally. It's incumbent upon us to provide them with the necessary assistance and programs to do that. What do we know so far? The Consumer Price Index, or the CPI, is at 4.7%. Since the CPI exceeds 2%, the district will utilize 2% in the tax cap formula. So the completion of the tax cap calculation has occurred. And the maximum allowable tax levy increase is 1.38%. That would be the highest that the district would be able to raise the tax levy. That is what the district has gone to, that number, whatever it may be, since the inception of the tax cap in 2012, 2013. That will not be the recommendation this year. Currently, the district has balanced the 2022-2023 budget using a tax levy increase of 0.99%. That's 0.39% less than the allowable tax levy increase. And dependent upon some of the estimates that we're currently estimating very conservatively, there is the potential for that 0.99 to come in even less than 0.99 for the recommended budget. We will know more on that in the coming months, but we do not anticipate that it will exceed 0.99. So the New York State Governor's executive budget proposal includes the reinstatement of the foundation aid formula. That's important. That's huge. Reimbursable aids were not amended in this proposal from New York State. Currently, the district is budgeting using the full governor's executive budget proposal. We're not sure what the legislature is going to determine in regards to the budget proposal. We're hoping that they will at least match the governor's proposal, if not exceed it. Again, why? We are returning from COVID. We have a lot of work to do, and we need to do it together, and we need to put those programs and services in place for our students. So as I said, stay tuned for the budget updates at the April 7th Board of Education meeting. So how did we get the preliminary budget? As I stated before, we connect with our community. What are the mission and core values of the Wappinger Central School District? The values and goals of the Board of Education, senior staff discussion and goals, and community input. Many of you have sent emails. You've either emailed me personally or you've emailed the budget email as to what you believe our students need. What do you want your children to have as students in the Wappinger Central School District based upon what we've all encountered in this pandemic? So needless to say, how do we build a preliminary balanced budget, which is what I'm presenting this evening? All salaries are budgeted. Substitute teacher codes are increased to align with projected costs. As I said before, increased staffing for social and emotional needs, social workers, E&L teachers, more special education teachers. Why? Personalize the educational experience for all of our students. Safety and security. We've recently seen within our district some threats over the year. We need to be proactive as we move forward. So what I am going to propose is that we put a safety and security officer at Wappingers Junior High School and Van Wyck Junior High School beginning next year. That hasn't happened to this point. It's needed, it's necessary, it's time. Also, the addition of a personnel assistant. This will be extremely beneficial because that individual will be responsible for all of the substitute personnel within our district. Currently, that is spread out among all of the personnel associates. We all know the difficulties in finding substitute personnel. This will be that individual's responsibility. And I know that it will show marked improvement in our ability to recruit and retain the best staff possible. We talked about opportunities for our kids. And fortunately, at the beginning of the school year, we said we were committed to opportunities for our kids. And to that point, COVID has not impacted any of our extracurricular activities, clubs, or athletics. They've all functioned. You heard President Lumia speak of the phenomenal accomplishments of many of our students. He also indicated that last year, those opportunities were not available to some of our students, which was extremely unfortunate. That has been a priority for this district. We're looking to add boys volleyball and girls modified lacrosse teams. Obviously, they're going to need coaches. They're going to need supplies. And in the area of the fine arts, why not have a marching band at Roy C. Ketchum High School and John Jay High School? We want to make that a reality. One of the things we've seen is that some of our students feel that they don't necessarily have a place to go, that they don't necessarily belong. Again, it's incumbent upon us to provide those students with those opportunities to learn, grow, and be successful. We can move on to the next slide, please. Obviously, we've got some contractual obligations. Unified bowling team, which is great. I want to thank the Poughkeepsie Journal for the article that was just phenomenal, that was shared with the Special Olympics. Obviously, we need to rent a facility for that. We don't have a district bowling alley. Special education, tuition, and direct service codes increase based on student need. If our students need the services, we need to work to provide them with the services that they need. Phone equipment upgrade at Roy C. Ketchum High School. Additional budget, as I said, safety and security for police coverage at all of our events. Athletic and physical education needs, weight room maintenance, ice machine at Roy C. Ketchum High School. And in addition to that, equipment upgrades. A new transportation routing and software program that will continue to help our transportation department, who worked diligently over the summer, continues to work diligently, and has uninterruptedly brought our students to and from school since the first day of school. This will make it that much easier and less time consuming for them to do that. Facilities project, $100,000. The possibility of universal pre-kindergarten. We may have St. Mary's of Wappingers as a provider next year, which means we will be able to accept more participants. And this is huge. The expansion of vocational and technical educational opportunities in our district. Years ago, when I was back in college, I did my master's in vocational and technical education. That was a long time ago. But unfortunately, between that time and now, vocational and technical education unfortunately went by the wayside. Well, now it's coming back. We all know it never should have gone away, but it's coming back because, as we all know, there are some phenomenal opportunities for individuals in the skilled trades. And as we all know, those individuals are looking for skilled employees. One of the things that we're doing is we're taking the welding program that we've had at Van Wyck Junior High School. We are going to duplicate it at Wappingers Junior High School. There's absolutely no reason why one middle school has the program and the other middle school doesn't. In September, they will both have it. And I look forward to continue to enhance the vocational and technical educational opportunities for our students as they have an opportunity to learn about those careers, what studies they entail, and they can make some determinations as to whether or not that might be a field that they may want to go into. I'm looking forward to that, and also working with Dutchess County BOCES as well as Dutchess Community College. BOCES estimated, obviously using the initial service request or the ISR form. Let's move on to the next slide if we could. Supplies, restoration of building level supply codes based on enrollment, restoration of curriculum-based supply requests based on enrollment. Classroom and teacher furniture added. Hopefully we won't have chairs that are not necessarily, well, let's just say they couldn't hold me if I attempted to sit in them. So let's get some new chairs and let's get some new tables and let's show our students how much we care about them by providing them with furniture that really adds to their entire educational environment. Of course, we have benefits. ERS, employee retirement system rates decrease, while the TRS or the teacher retirement system rates remain constant. Health insurance is budgeted at 8%. We'll know more where that comes out in March of this year, which only a month and a half away. So let's take a look at some numbers. So the 2021-2022 approved tax levy was $179 million, about $700. The 2022-2023 preliminary tax levy will be $181,487,000, which is a levy-to-levy increase of $1,787,000, which is a levy-to-levy percentage of 0.99%. The approved budget, about $256 million. The preliminary budget for 22-23, 264. Budget to budget, about $8.5 million. Budget to budget increase from one year to the next, 3.33%. We can move on to the next, please. So as I stated before, the preliminary budget that I'm presenting this evening includes a levy-to-levy increase of 0.99%. As I stated, it's 0.39 below the allowable tax cap levy amount. Pending the finalization of the state aid through the state budget process and the estimates that we're using, we do not anticipate, as I stated before, a levy-to-levy increase of more than 0.99%. We will continue to review all budgetary items in an effort to reduce the levy-to-levy rate for the community. And on to the next slide, if we could. So let's take a look at this chart. So let's go back. 17-18, the WCSD tax cap was 0.95%. The approved tax levy was 0.95%. 18-19, the tax cap was 2.92, tax levy 2.92. 19-20, tax cap 1.42, tax levy 1.42. You see there's a theme here. 2021, WCSD tax cap 3.64, levy to levy, tax levy 3.64. 21-22, 2.49, tax levy 2.49. And this is where we make changes. Tax cap 2022-2023 preliminary 1.38, tax levy increase. The numbers are not similar, 0.99. I personally believe in working with Assistant Superintendent Crandall the district senior staff administration, the Board of Education, our faculty and staff, and getting input from our community, that we can continue to deliver the services that I identified in the presentation and be fiscally responsible to the taxpayers within our school district. And with that, it was my pleasure to have the opportunity to present this evening. What can you expect in the future? Send those emails, please, to budget@wcsdny.org. Did you like what you heard? Did you not like what you heard? Let us know. Presentations and reports will be posted to the Board of Education section of the website. Frequently asked questions posted to the website within 2 business days. We will continue providing our educational updates to the WCSD learning community. The Legislative Action Committee Board approved goal for continued advocacy is not to lose any New York State funding. And I might also add, one of the items that I have been advocating in, as Vice President Kelland indicated through the school board advocate efforts, I have been advocating with local elected officials, and I will be going to Albany to advocate for the removal of the cap on retired police officers' salaries not to exceed $35,000. I've been mentioning this now for the past couple of months. I think we've seen it here in Wappingers. I think we've seen it throughout the state and throughout the country. We need our schools to be as safe as possible. And by just extending hours, that doesn't do it. We need individuals that have the expertise in working with difficult to sometimes volatile situations, that are able to work as often as needed to develop a positive rapport with that staff, with those students, and that community. We find that when we're able to do that and that positive relationship is established, people are more willing to speak to someone about something that they're hearing that might be concerning to them. So I am hopeful that we get some movement from New York State in that regard, because without that, we can increase the hours all we want, but it's going to be different people. So it'll help, but it won't help to the extent necessary, which is being more proactive as opposed to having to be more reactive. We will be doing community and municipality presentations to share the budget. And of course, our priorities, a safe learning environment for our students and staff, where all of our students can reach their highest level of success, not only academically, but socially and emotionally as well. And with that, I thank you for the opportunity to present this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Bunk, for your excellent presentation. Are there any questions at this time from any board member? Eddie?
Thank you, Dr. Bunk. Needless to say, I'm happy to see in your presentation that you took recommendations from the board very seriously. And that way I'd like to compliment you and senior staff for pretty much including most, if not almost all, of my suggestions. So I greatly appreciate that. Especially, I know, although prior administration did try to implement marching band, which I had suggested a couple of years ago. Unfortunately, we didn't have much participation. I'm hoping this time around, from a student standpoint, we have a little bit more enthusiasm at both of the high schools to get that up and running. That would be fantastic. Obviously, I've always been a big advocate for vocational and increasing the vocational program, so I'm very happy that you were able to include that within the budget. The other thing also mentioned is taking a look at some of our outdated sports equipment in the schools. That's an important thing as well. Sometimes, we forget about the other sports. We do have other things besides football, baseball, basketball, and soccer. So the other things for the kids to participate in, we still need top quality equipment. I just have, and then we covered obviously the social and emotional, with the mental health assistance and expanding and continue to grow that. So that's great. I just have one quick question. One of the things that I had suggested, you may have included it, but it wasn't spelled out specifically. Some additional enrichment for the lower grades, 5 to 8, other than what Mr. Panzer works on, either creative writing. Is there any way that we're going to be able to somehow just expand some of the enrichment programs at the lower grades? That's one question. And then my second question just is, based on what you started last year for summer school, are we going to be able to maintain those programs from a budget standpoint? And if by chance there's a need to increase, where there may be more class time, do we have sufficient monies in the budget that we can allocate? I think we had about 900 or so students last summer. I don't know, we could have 1,200 students this coming summer, just to make sure we have the resources for the students and for faculty. So those are really just my two questions. Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome. Yeah, we fully plan on replicating what we did last summer, and we also look to potentially expand it as well. The only concern that we potentially have is staffing. We're hoping that some of our staff internally will be willing to work over the summer. Again, I know it's been a difficult 2 years, but these types of academic enrichment activities and services for our students over the summer, in my opinion, are going to become common over the next few years. They're going to be necessary. So we certainly plan on doing that, and we're looking into ways in which we can provide those opportunities K-12. We fully anticipate on doing that. And your first question?
Back, just expanding on some of the enrichment programs for lower grades, starting. I just, in my head,
You're talking about during the
fifth grade. Yeah.
You're talking about starting in September?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, we are evaluating everything. A lot is going to depend upon, how our assessment of students comes in this year as we continue through the end of the school year. But as I said, we're seeing learning loss. There's no question about it. And we're going to have to be proactive, and it's going to be incumbent upon us to come up with some very, very innovative programs and make sure that we allocate the resources necessary. So that in some cases, our students will be going, and I know they may not be happy to hear this, but they may be going to school pretty close to year round if their parents would like them to. Again, I see that not only this summer, but I see it in the coming summers. And we've got to be mindful of it to get our students back to where they need to be, pre-pandemic levels.
Right. I just feel, as important as it is for the learning loss for those particular students, I mean, I'd say thankfully to say we do have a percentage of students, I won't only quote me to a number, that have maintained, but also need that enrichment push.
Yep.
I don't want those students to kind of then be left behind, because we're focusing all of our attention on those students who had learning loss. So we have to figure out a balance where those that, we need to give them that extra push to achieve, we want them to have those same opportunities. So
agreed.
That's all. Thank you.
Agreed. You're welcome. Sure.
I have a question.
Sure, Trustee Odoms.
Thank you. You have mentioned the tax cap of 0.99, and since we know that the tax cap drives and support the budget, will this affect future budgets, or does it reset every year in terms of, we don't fully use it? Will we lose some? Will that kind of affect?
Good question, Ms. Crandall. I know you have the answer because we talked about this, that this might come up. So you could probably answer it much more proficiently than I could. Are you there, Ms. Crandall?
I am right here. So, Mr. Odoms, and I saw Mr. Spencer shaking his head as well. You are correct. If the district does not go all the way up to the tax cap of 1.38, there are dollars that will be lost. Approximately $880,000 would be money that would never be able to be recovered through this process. However, that does translate into a tax rate that is below what the max allowable would be. And as Dr. Bonk has mentioned before, there are other local municipalities and towns and so forth that are presenting budgets that are at a 0%. And Dr. Bonk, you may want to go into that. So the district will find itself in a position to have to explain itself as to why we have to have increases versus municipalities not necessarily having them. So Dr. Bonk, I'll bounce it back to you.
Sure. I don't have the specific criteria in front of me, but Ms. Crandall, would you say that it would be accurate, probably within Dutchess County, to say that probably at least half of the school districts last year in their budget did not go up to the cap? Would that be accurate, do you believe?
I think it's even more than that, but yes, it was a
So
higher
I was
percentage
on the
than that.
conservative side. So this is not something that has not been done. It hasn't been done in this district. It has been done in other districts. And when I've spoken with colleagues in those districts that have done that, they've indicated that they were very, very pleased with how they were able to go through the process and prioritize what they did need and what they did not need. And it really, really refocused them on a very, very, I don't want to say lean budget, but a budget that provided the programs and services that the student needed, and almost forced them to some degree to streamline some areas of the budget. And that's what I believe we're doing. The district has lost enrollment over the years. We just are returning from a pandemic. I think things have changed. I think things have changed within the world. I think the needs of our students have changed. I think to some degree, the focus of what a school does, depending upon who you ask, has changed. And I think that we as a district need to change with it. And by saying that, what I mean is that we need to go through our budget with a fine-tooth comb. And where there are areas that it simply makes sense to leverage resources or to combine resources, that's what we're doing. And we've done that. The budget that I'm presenting to you this evening is not a budget that is cutting any current services. If anything, it is expanding services to the extent that I indicated on the slides. Now, Ms. Crandall, could you potentially share how, if we go forward with that, how's that going to impact our fund balance compared to where our fund balance is now?
Sure, certainly. So the fund balance there's no fund balance utilization beyond the 3.75 million that we have consistently returned to the taxpayers. This budget is 100% balanced, utilizing the tax levy, the New York State aid as projected right now through the governor's proposal, the assigned fund balance of 3.75 million, which has remained constant and really needs to in order to be able to make this whole calculation work, and the expenditures as presented this evening. So that is a balanced budget utilizing no fund balance, and in order for it to be able to work, no unassigned fund balance will be utilized. So again, as we have seen in 2020, we had a fund balance decrease that brought us down to approximately 1.39%. And then in 2021, we recognized a fund balance increase, which brought us to 3.58%. And we hope to continue to get it closer to that 4% maximum allowable as per New York State at the end of June 30th, 2022.
Thank you, Ms. Crandall. You hit on exactly what I wanted to convey, that based upon where that fund balance was, based on the work done last year and based on what we're doing this year, we expect to be up to the maximum allowable fund balance limit, which is important because we never know what's going to come down the road.
And the follow-up question is, some people may be
Excuse
thinking
me,
that's
I need a motion to extend.
I was just going to say, motion
So
for
moved. And
Ken.
Second, everybody in favor?
yes.
Unanimous.
Yeah.
How long was that? How
10
long?
minutes, I said.
Thank you.
And just a follow-up question. Thank you for the answer. And just a follow-up
Sure.
question. Some people
Sure.
are thinking that's great. Wappinger is going to continue to provide quality education using less funds or being really physically responsible. But what does it mean for me as maybe a taxpayer that does not have kids in in the school district? You know, the three things they're thinking is that going to still increase my taxes? Is it going to remain par, or is it going to decrease it? So that's what
So,
people just
Good question.
want to
Ms.
hear.
Crandall, could you give the specifics?
Sure.
Thank you, Trustee Odoms.
sure. So, Mr. Odoms, at this point in time, we normally do not try to present that information out because we wait until we have finalized state aid numbers. Because again, if this state aid comes in at the same, a little bit lower, some of these estimates may change. What we will provide in an upcoming presentation is what a projected tax rate would be for homes of varying values. Let's use $200,000, $400,000, $500,000 homes. We'll be able to provide what an estimated rate would look like, an estimated tax bill would look like based on current year assessments, because we don't have the assessments for that 22-23 school year yet, but we should have the updated tax levy amount and be able to provide that. So that we don't necessarily break it down into people who have, or families who have students in school, or families whose students may have aged out. But what we do it is by house value. So we'll be able to provide that information. We are still pretty early in this process. Quite a few estimates are still hanging out there, as well as, you know, the overall picture of what state aid would look like. So hopefully the budget will come in at New York State by April 1st. And I know that's something that I'm sure that Governor Hochul would like to have as a notch in her belt as well, because that is a great accomplishment, and we can move forward. April 7th, we will be having a presentation that will detail all of this. At that point in time, we'll be able to support the superintendent's recommended budget with finalization of those aid numbers, and definitely be able to provide that information as requested, Mr. Odoms.
Ms. Crandall, thank you for that answer, but I think it's safe to say that coming in with a budget 0.39% under the tax cap will lower the tax rates. They will be lower with a 0.99 increase as opposed to a 1.38 increase, correct? Yes.
Yeah. Well,
It all
the
depends.
increase. Well, right. It all depends on the assessment. Until I run those numbers, I just want to make sure, Dr. Bonk, I'll confirm that for you as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Jim, did you have a question before Marie? Did you have a question? What up, Marie? Jim,
I did, but Dr. Bonk and Assistant Superintendent Crandall answered them while they were answering Trustee Odom. So I don't
Thank
have
you.
any more questions.
Marie.
Only I just have an observation. It's impressive that you're looking to be so fiscally responsible and only increasing the amount from the taxpayers, about $1.7 million. And overall, getting a budget increase of $8.5 million. It's pretty impressive how you did that. My question was about the fund balance, and you answered it, so thank you.
You're welcome, Trustee
Marie,
Spencer.
Marie, you had a question or questions? Go ahead, Marie.
Yes, actually, it was more of an observation. First, I want to thank Dr. Bonk and Kristen and the entire senior staff for making my wish list happen on this budget. The special ed, the increase in that, the more extensive, expanding the field trips, the marching band, the vocational, you hit all my dream spots on this. And just always, and having the full salaries actually budgeted in this year, no surprises, and making
Fully
it
transparent.
I was very impressed this year. And, you know, luckily, I will say, if we were to go to 1.38 versus the 0.99, I'm thinking my taxes would have been a little higher versus the 0.99. So again, as a new homeowner in this district, thank you very much.
Are there any other questions? Peggy?
Yes, I also was very happy to see all my desires there, or almost all. The increase in the sports, the marching band that we tried to get before, the vocational programs, which are so important, the mental health and special ed expansions that we need. The only thing that I would like to see, if we could, was to expand intramurals, because there are students who really cannot commit to a team or just really are not coordinated enough for a particular sport, but would like to play. And some of the facilities at the high schools out of season, for instance, the gyms, the fall and spring sports are played outside. So the gyms are available if we can find people who are willing, the staff who are willing to give some kids the opportunity to just play for fun.
Terry?
I just wanted to say it gets clear that there's some sensitivity as well placed on the fact that, you know, there's a lot of reaching into the pocket based on the CPI. So the consumer price index, there's actually an increase of 7% over the last year, the highest and largest since 1982. So considering that folks have had a lot of reaching in the pocket based on all the prices going up, I think it's pretty cool that there's some sensitivity built in here, and the budget is still getting the job done. So good job, Dr. Bonk.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Trustee Cahill.
John, Mr. Morgan?
Thank you, President Lumia. To use the phrase that I'm glad Trustee Spencer introduced, I think that at first blush, this shows fiscal responsibility. And I, for one, am happy to see that. And I think that there are other people here too who have already talked about things that are being added. I know during the presentation, Dr. Bonk, you talked about new routing software for our very large transportation department. You talked about how that would make it easier and more convenient. And you talked about those things. What you didn't mention is that going into this school year, a lot of bus routes were combined, which realized savings for the district in that area that freed up money to do other things. So my question is, could you highlight a couple of areas similar to that that are included in the plan for next school year, number one? And number two, could you or Assistant Superintendent Crandall talk about how maintaining a strong fund balance, a strong rainy day fund, for lack of a better term, will help the fiscal strength of the school district moving forward?
Very good. Ms. Crandall, if you wouldn't mind, if you can take the fund balance question.
Sure.
Thank
So,
you.
Can I get a motion to extend first, please?
Motion for 5 minutes.
5 more minutes, motion to 5, extend, raise your hand, please. Yeah, unanimous, 5 more minutes.
Certainly. So with regard to the fund balance, as we've referenced before, it is essentially a savings account. So having those funds available within the New York State guidelines is definitely a plus for the district. There are reserve accounts that could be created if there was in excess of 4%. And actually that was one of the items that was on Trustee Sloshower's list. However, at this point in time, our tax sortiers seem to be okay. Our capital reserve and some of those reserves are very, very restrictive. But you know, we will be mindful of that as we plan. So yes, having fund balance definitely does reduce fiscal stress with regard to the district as an overall, and just the increase in fund balance from 2020 to 2021 year ends was significant, and we hope to continue that trend.
Christian.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things we've seen from year to year is these wild fluctuations in funding. And it's very, very difficult to develop and sustain programs and services when you run into those issues year to year. So if there is a way to increase our fund balance up to the maximum in the event that we find ourselves in a situation in any given year, we can have the discussion about dipping into that fund balance to fund programs and services that we believe are extremely important to our district, and not necessarily place those costs onto the taxpayers of our district. That is what I would like to see moving forward. That is why the restoration of the fund balance is so important to me, and Ms. Crandall as well. You talked about what transportation did over the summer. You're absolutely right, Trustee Morgan, and that will continue. We believe that the new software system will improve the routing. It will make the routing more effective, more efficient, more timely, less cumbersome. One of the other areas that we're looking at is potentially streamlining, and I don't want to say streamlining because we're not eliminating any positions, but how do we avoid the duplication of services within our 15 schools? Is there a way to do that? Do we need certain people assigned to certain things, or could we potentially assign them to an area that we believe is deficient and needs improvement? That has been an ongoing assessment. Obviously, since I've been in my role over the past year and a half, I really haven't had a tremendous amount of time to be able to sit down and look at that, but I know the department heads have, and that's something that we're also going to be taking into consideration in the future. I'm also potentially looking at our special education department. And I need to thank Assistant Superintendent Zip and that entire staff for doing a tremendous job. That being said, we need to ensure that our focus remains on providing our students with the necessary services that they need. And it's incumbent upon us to find a way to be able to do that. So one of the things that you're going to see hopefully coming up in the budget is, I don't want to use the word realignment because that's going to get people all worried, oh, they're going to realign. But you may see some redeployment of some of the services in a manner that is more effective and more efficient and serves more kids better than the manner in which we currently do so. So I hope that answers your questions. I wish I could be more specific. I don't have the specifics, but that's the general tone of what we are looking to do as a district level senior team as we move forward.
Thank you, Dr.
Dr. Bonk.
You're
Just to
welcome.
point out,
Trustee
one of
Morgan.
the specific areas that Dr. Bonk had mentioned is in the area of human resources with regard to the
Thank you.
online application process, for example. That has been a work in process, but we will be having that. That's a very streamlined process. We work with TSS department as well.
You know, and you gave me another idea, and I know that I'm using your time, Board of Education, and I apologize. But I mentioned it briefly. The Human Resources Department has undergone much change over the past 5 years. And we are now in a position where we are very reliant on substitute personnel. It was starting to get there before the pandemic. Now it's even more of a necessity. So the addition of that personnel assistant that will be coming in, that their responsibility will be substitute personnel throughout the district in our 9 different collective bargaining units, as opposed to having it directly with a couple of personnel. One personnel associate would have a couple of units. Another one would have a couple of units. This will be helpful in developing consistency and continuity. And then there will be one person who will be the go-to person for the substitute personnel within our district. Also, the benefit to that is the recruitment. We want to make sure that we have the best and the brightest working in our district. Whether they be regular employees, substitute employees, doesn't matter. This individual will be directly involved in the screening and interview process as well. So the human resources is another area, Trustee Morgan. Ms. Crandall, thank you for mentioning it.
Just as a last comment, and so far, Mr. Schleichauer talked about enrichment programs. we have Dr. Miller, who has provided enrichment programs in the district. I sincerely hope that we continue with his services and expand it to different schools. Extremely important. Secondly, I think the the professional developers. I wish that could increase in size because they do a phenomenal job, and they could be a source of enrichment for the kids at the elementary school level.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, President Lumia, because our expectation moving forward is the professional developers who have been a tremendous resource, not only for our teachers, but teachers throughout the region. We're looking to have them work more, in particular in our elementary buildings, in that exact area, enrichment. And again, we've communicated that to the principals. We've communicated that to the directors that we want them in there with some of the most innovative techniques. As we know, teachers, we need to change our craft every year. Things change every year, and technology is constantly changing. So I see their role. I don't see the number of individuals expanding, but I see their role and the depth of their role expanding, President Lumia.
I hope so. Also, I'm glad that you're reinstating marching band. There used to be a program in existence for many, many years, and I don't know when it stopped, but I sincerely hope that this time around there'll be people interested in actually joining the marching band on both.
Well, one of the things I will say is, prior to coming to Wappingers, I worked in a district to the north of us. I enjoyed my time there very much. And they have one of the best marching bands in the country. Now, you probably know the district that I'm talking about, and I could see the positive impact that it had on the students and the families and the self-esteem of those individuals. And I say, why not Wappingers? So hopefully we can move forward with that. I think we will have the interest. We'll do our best to generate it.
Thank you for your presentation, Dr. Bunk, and looking forward to your next one. And with that
My
being
pleasure.
5.02 vehicle replacement plan for 22-23. I believe that's going to.
So is this the next presentation that you're looking forward to, or the next budget presentation?
Well, let's hope it's as good as the just one we gave.
All right. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the bus proposition. Oh, yeah, there we are. Okay, we have the right one. Okay. So here we are. It's February the 7th. We're talking about the bus proposition for the upcoming 22-23 school year. Obviously, the mission of the district: empower all of our students with the competencies, confidence to challenge themselves, pursue their passions, realize their potential while growing as responsible members of our community. So if we can move on to the second, potentially third. Let's move on to the third page, if we could. Okay. Transportation facts, our current fleet, our vehicle fleet breakdown. And unfortunately, I can't see the numbers here. Hold on one second.
There are not numbers. This is just a pictorial of so you can see the size of the pie chart. We can definitely
so
update.
if I look at this graph correctly, you will see that probably about 70% of the vehicles we have are large buses. I would say probably about 20% are passenger vans. And I would say probably the other 5% are made up of caravans and wheelchair accessible vans. Would that be correct, Ms. Crandall?
That is pretty darn close, Dr. Bunk.
Okay. So if we could move to the next slide. Just like people retire, vehicles retire. 22 vehicles proposed to be retired. This includes 15 large buses and 7 vans. The large bus typically retires at about a little over 120,000 miles. The passenger vans are up above 134,000 miles. The age, large buses, almost about 11 years. Passenger vans, little over 10. Recommended bus proposition request 22-23. So we have 71 passenger buses. They're diesel. Number requested 15. Cost per vehicle 119,000, about 1.8 million. 28 passenger vans, gasoline. 2 vehicles requested, 59,895, about 120,000. 22 passenger wheelchair vans, they're gasoline, requesting one, 76,504, 5,004. 20 passenger vans, gasoline, 4 requested at about 56,785, comes to about 227,000. Total cost, 22 vehicles, $2.213 million. So the district uses 5-year revolving bond anticipation rate notes to finance the purchase of school vehicles. Adding a bus proposition annually to the ballot allows for consistency in budgeting for the related bus band principal payments in the general fund, as only the change in proposition amount is adjusted to the general fund balance. The bus proposition expense is aidable annually, and the 22-23 proposition would result in a net savings of approximately $47,596 starting in the 23-24 school year, which is approximately $74 less than budgeted in the 21-22 for bus band payments. We move on to the next page. Okay, good. Thank you. Facts to consider vehicle replacement plan 22-23 bus proposition. Safety and fleet age. Obviously, the responsibility is to provide students with safe transportation to and from school. That requires that our vehicles are working and functioning properly, meeting all of the New York State DOT requirements. We need to ensure that we continue to hire qualified personnel to perform the duties. And federal requirements effective in February 2020 will make it hard to train and hire qualified drivers. Obviously, it has been very, very difficult to find bus drivers. We have had a bus driver training program. That was one of the things that we discussed over the course of the summer. I believe 10 people have graduated from that program, and we have another 8. Is that correct, Ms. Crandall? Are my statistics
Yes.
correct?
That's correct. And there's also a waiting list for us to continue this training. Actually, the new federal requirements go into effect today.
Okay. So this is good news. So we're making progress. Fiscal diligence. We've talked about it before with our budget, the responsibility, maintain a stable expenditure level for the Wappinger Central School District taxpayers related to the maintenance of school vehicles. When you pay now for required replacements, there's significant cost savings as opposed to paying later, when vehicles will require increased costs due to breakdowns and service. That's pretty obvious. Aging fleets require significant higher maintenance and related labor costs. The use of contract transportation is needed during times of personnel concerns, in which I wouldn't say we have personnel concerns, but we have difficulty in finding qualified personnel. We can move to the next page. Enrollment, primary responsibility. Even though our enrollment has declined and it looks as though that it's almost starting to stabilize, even though that's happened, we've had an increase in the small vehicle ridership within the same boundaries. So we have to continue to be aware of the shifting enrollment and the students' need. The fleet has been adjusted to the proper ratio at this time, and we need to maintain district policy on 100% transportation and walking limits. This is where our new transportation software will be extremely helpful as we map this out for the future. And we got to have student needs aligned to New York State mandates and requirements. You know, we need to maintain a stable expenditure while we ensure that the transportation requirements for students are being met so that they're getting the transportation that they deserve. Costs related to different types of vehicles needed, obviously, replacing older vehicles. We talked about that. We see an increase in van ridership, increased number of out-of-district placements, increased number of federal mandated transportation for students. And let's move to the last page if we could. So we encourage the community to share feedback, ask questions, gain a further understanding through the various events and communication methods. Again, budget at WCSDNY.org. Email us with questions, concerns, and feedback. You can check out our budget website for the 22-23 budget at www.wappingerschools.org. Prior year budget information is also available on the website, and the district senior staff will be participating in some of our local municipality meetings to provide a budget presentation. I think it's important to provide that where we have the ability to make the community aware of what we are required to spend, what we do spend, and why we spend it, and where does the money go. And of course, public comment at Board of Education meetings and budget public hearings. One thing I'd like to say to the board as I wrap this up, a number of board members indicated that they were pleased to see that items that they had included in their wish lists were included. That is true. There are also a number of parents who I'm sure are also seeing that a number of items that they indicated they wanted included in the budget. This is true. And there are faculty and staff that have asked for assistance in various areas that they have identified as needs that have been included in the budget. And that also is true. So again, it's a community developed budget for our community. And with that, that ends the bus proposition presentation. And I see we have a couple of hands. So I think Ms. Johnson, Trustee Johnson, I think you had your hand up first, and then Trustee McFarland, you followed shortly behind. But you were close, Trustee McFarland. So let's go with Trustee Johnson.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bonk. I'm
Sure.
just going to try and clarify a few things. I know sometimes the public isn't quite sure. This is
Sure.
about the same amount that we roll off. So we're not incurring a new expense in our budget line. This is basically we roll off an old one and we're rolling into a new one, and it's just consistently staying. So we're keeping what we're doing in our budget line. If I'm not mistaken, is my first part. And the second part, Ms. Crandall, I'm trying to just remember this is starting the 800 series because we finished replacing the 700, correct?
Yeah, so to your first point, that is correct. We use a 5-year revolving bond anticipation note, as Dr. Bonk had indicated during the presentation. So as 1 year falls off of that revolving payment plan, we look to institute a very similarly sized proposition. This one is about $47,000 less than last year's proposition. Last year, every proposition looks a little bit different with regard to the types and the numbers of vehicles that we need. As we continue to look at this process, we have looked at alternative fuel vehicles. There's some significant infrastructure changes that would be needed, and as part of a long-term plan and working with the Capital Improvement Committee as we look to see what other types of vehicles besides diesel and gasoline options are available to the district. On the second piece of your question, Trustee Johnson, I lost it. Oh my goodness.
It was
is
regarding,
my-
yeah, we had the
Sorry.
700 series we'd been replacing. I think
Sure,
we
so, right. So sorry. The 700 series, for the most part on the large, or for the large vehicles, I'm sorry, all the 700s are gone. The 800 series are what we're currently looking at the larger vehicles. The vans, because they have a shorter lifespan, but they travel more miles as they travel outside of district with our special needs students, or travel more in district miles for students between programs. They're not all 800 series, just because of the, how we purchase them in past propositions. But yes, we are well into the 800 series and trying to get ourselves onto a true vehicle replacement plan, which we couldn't do for a number of years. So now, with the assistance of Director Bross, we're really trying to bust it out and get this vehicle replacement plan to where it's adequate. Again, once we instituted concrete or paved surfaces, paved surfaces at all of our bus yards, we're seeing a significant difference as well with the undercarriages, the rust of these vehicles as they age.
Michael, you were next.
Yeah, so I brought this up once before on when we talked about buses. I think we need to start to electrify these buses, even if it's a small van. And we need to at least start. I mean, right now, if you saw in the paper, Governor Hochul is giving us money for buses for the schools. I understand the cost is higher and there may have to be some infrastructure changes to accommodate it. But on a scale of 1 to 2 buses, I don't think we'd have to upgrade anything at the current basis, especially with our infrastructure. So I think we need to look forward to that, and it'll give the community a good sense of that we're trying to protect the environment and lower our carbon footprint also. Thank you.
I have to agree with Mrs. McFarland insofar as getting perhaps a poly, get some vans, small vans, and wheelchair. Maybe the wheelchair could be electrical, and so that's a suggestion. Secondly, as the fact that we have a bus garage where we can clean buses, has that in any way affected the age of the buses?
Sure. So we never had the opportunity to, we had the opportunity to take our buses actually to the car wash prior to the Fishkill Plains compound being put in place. Just on a recent superintendent's conference day in the fall, Director Broas managed to work with the mechanics and the bus drivers that were in, and we had almost 75% of our buses washed that day. And again, that's a process because we are responsible for the hazardous waste that comes off the vehicles, because anything that washes off those vehicles does have to be recycled in the proper manner and handled the proper way. So President Lumia, as you had indicated, in addition to what I had mentioned about the paved surfaces, having the ability to wash the salt off these vehicles is a big plus. When we had second shift drivers, we also utilized them prior to the pandemic to be cleaning vehicles as well. We actually had a rotation that they clean these vehicles. So, and the drivers know that they check with the Fishkill Plains compound and can go in on any given day and run their bus through the wash, which really is helpful for both the exterior and the undercarriage of these vehicles.
With the next approval of transportation proposition, is it possible we can pilot at least one wheelchair or one van to be electric? And of course, that would change the bus amount. Is it possible at this stage to do that?
We would need to go out and get I have the bids for that information. But again, I cannot speak. It's more than just purchasing one of these vehicles. So it's really working to make sure that we have the infrastructure to be able to support it. So that is, if the board wanted to put off the approval of this proposition, we could definitely look into it. But these vehicles are running 2 to 3 times the cost of what a standard vehicle is. And I understand cost is not necessarily the only factor in this. However, it is a significantly higher cost. And if we're trying to maintain a general fund budget line as well as a tax cap, because the bus proposition does impact the tax cap, that is something we have to be mindful of as well.
John,
Guys, I have a quick
Mr.
question.
Morgan? I'm sorry, Carrie. Morgan, and then you, Carrie. John, Mr. Morgan?
Given that we've just had an extensive budget presentation that we extended multiple times to have discussion on, not to disagree with what you, President Lumia, or you, Trustee McFarland, said, as a holder of companies that make electrified vehicles, I'm certainly not opposed to that, but I think we might be rushing into something that I would really like to see us look at, what kind of infrastructure we need to have first before we get into the electrical vehicle market. The other thing that I would point out, with no disrespect to anybody, I don't want this comment to be perceived as ageist, but I think there are people involved in this Zoom call that can remember when one of these ran you about $100 when calculators were brand new. This came from Staples for probably $9.99. So we may be early in jumping into the electrical vehicle field right this very moment. both from an infrastructure perspective and the scale of production. And I agree with what Assistant Superintendent Crandall just said with regard to cost isn't the only factor, but it's an important factor to me.
Mike,
Thank
before
you.
before you address, Carrie was next, and Michael, and then Peggy. Go ahead, Carrie.
Thanks, John. I won't be so long now because I'm going to echo what John just said, because I was going to talk in terms of the novelty of the electric vehicles right now, and then over time how of course, we would hope the cost goes down. But yeah, it's infrastructure. It's also the training of the mechanics and stuff. I mean, isn't it a whole different way of handling these vehicles? They'd all have to be trained. And then also, in terms of like when we were talking about salaries before for nurses and then retirements. So how about longevity, right? What do we really know about the life of these vehicles? We'd have to think short-term, long-term, zoom in, zoom out. So I agree with John Morgan that it's just a conversation for another time with a lot of things to be considered.
Michael?
So there are a lot of districts out there now that already run electric buses or electric, small buses. And I'm not saying we need to do it on a large scale. We could start with 1 or 2 small buses. We wouldn't have to upgrade our infrastructure. Eventually in the capital improvement market, we're going to expand our utility service and upgrade our services. But we just need to kind of think about this long term. Do we at least get one now and see, does the bus companies that sell it to us going to train us? Most of them do. They train all your mechanics. They train your drivers. I think we need to start somewhere. We can't just keep kicking this can down the road. It's not going to work.
Peggy?
Mr. Lumia, we're out of
Yes,
time. Oh, we're out of time.
5
I
more
need a
minutes. I
motion.
make a motion to make 5 more minutes.
5
Second.
Second by Peggy, unanimous vote. Okay, go ahead, Peggy.
Right, I agree with both sides on this, and that I think we should be thinking of moving toward electrical buses, but we have to plan carefully how best to do it in a fiscally responsible manner. Kristen, if you could tell us, I know we get state aid back for a certain amount on the buses. Now, I also know that Governor Hochul's been talking about more aid for electrical buses, and I believe the federal infrastructure bill, that's not the COVID relief, this is another one that was just passed last fall, did include some money, I believe, for electric buses. I'm not sure if it was in that or the proposed Build Back Better bill, but I think it was infrastructure. And so it would be important to find out exactly what kind of aid we could get to help us pay for this cost. I do know that electrical vehicles require less maintenance, and apparently they seem to have, or so they say, who knows yet, seem to have longer lifespans. So I think we should definitely be looking into and planning how we're going to jump in on this when it does become fiscally responsible for the district.
Eddie?
Just real quick, because we've discussed this a little bit in capital. I mean, we could bring this up, Trustee McFarland, again, and just go over some stuff with Amoresco. I mean, first and foremost, I'd like to get our solar panels and get that up and running. And even for 1 or 2 buses, we still would need a charging station. So we'd have to figure out the logistics of that as well. So, we can, if you'd like, I'd be more than happy making another agenda item moving forward, and we can get some basic information from Amoresco, just from an infrastructure standpoint, to see where that takes us before we start, talking about the actual cost for the physical buses. So I'm okay with that if you are.
Well, I think at this stage of development of the budget and the proposition, I think there's something we should consider for next year. It should be considered a great length.
Oh, we could start like I said, John, like I said, I'd love for us to finalize and get, our solar up and running, and, we can continue this conversation, through the spring, through the summer, and so
Again,
forth.
I just don't want to keep kicking the can down the road. I want to.
Correct. And we need to
Michael,
look at the
I think-
garages too.
I think for next year, this is definitely something that Christian should look into, all the finances, all the reimbursements from Governor Hochul, as well as the federal government, and stop piloting some of these things on a small scale and see what
Right.
happens.
Well, as soon as that information is available, we'll certainly look into it. It's not something that hasn't been discussed. We've discussed propane vehicles in the past as well. So, you know, it's not as if this has never been an option. However, this is a significant additional cost. So again, we will definitely add it to next year for sure.
Thank you. 5.03, approval for transportation preposition. Peggy?
I need the screen sharing.
Let me read it.
No, here it is. Thank you. We've got it. It's coming. Okay. Resolved that the Board of Education of the Wappinger Central School District authorizes the submission of the following proposition for the qualified voters of the district to vote on at the annual district meeting, budget vote, and election to be held on May 17th, 2022. Shall the Board of Education of the Wappinger Central School District, Putnam and Dutchess Counties, New York District, be authorized to purchase student transportation vehicles at a maximum estimated sum of $2,213,568, and said amount or so much therefore as may be necessary shall be raised by the levy of a tax upon the taxable property of the district and collected in annual installments as provided by law, and for which obligations of the district may be issued.
Motion?
So moved.
So moved by Marie first and second Peggy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, Alberta. 5.04, presentation of the Smart School Bond Act Plan number 5.
All right, good evening, everyone.
Yours.
All right, so Art Schouten, Director Schouten and I are going to present the presentation together. I'm going to give a quick overview as to why we're talking about a Smart Schools Bond Act proposition, and Art will explain the proposition itself for what we're looking to do with the next plan. Art, you can go to the next page. Hopefully my audio is okay. I'm having Art share a screen because I don't really trust
It's
my
good. It's good.
at the moment. Good, very good. Okay, so just as a quick debrief for those who are not familiar with Smart Schools, we haven't put a plan forward in a couple of years. Smart Schools Bond Act stems from a state referendum that went before the public in November of 2014 where the voters of New York State approved a $2 billion referendum to allow for bonding set amount of $2 billion statewide for the purpose of having schools expend these funds across these 4 categories. They could either install high-speed broadband or wireless internet connectivity for schools and communities. We can acquire learning technology or facilities. But technology could be included for things such as interactive whiteboards, computers, desktops, etc. We can construct and enhance and modernize educational facilities to accommodate pre-kindergarten programs and to provide instructional space to replace classroom trailers. Or we can install high-tech security features in schools, school buildings and on school campuses, for a myriad of other things. And to extent, you can go next slide, Art. To the extent we've done a lot of that already. Their allocation that the district has received as a result of that referendum from 2014 was $5,327,266. The requisites for spending that money were that we were to include a committee of stakeholders, which we refer to as our Smart Schools Bond Act Committee, that we are to also incorporate anytime we provided expenditures related to instructional technology that our private and parochial schools in our district received an allocation of said funds based on a formula for an equivalent amount to whatever we're spending on instructional technology. There wasn't any requirement for us to spend across those 4 categories that I mentioned a certain amount in each category. It could have all been instructional technology. It all could have been security or facilities improvements, etc. There's been no deadline for the completion of said expenditures, but that we basically have to go through this process where we present a plan that was created by the Smart Schools Bond Act Committee. We present it to the board as a preliminary plan, and we allow a 30-day comment period. At the end of the 30-day comment period, we either make adjustments to the plan or we present it as a final draft plan for the board to approve. So our plan is this is step one, is to present this to the Board of Education and present it for the beginning of the 30-day comment period. And at some point, we'll revisit this in March, probably the March 14th meeting for a final approval. The next step would then be to send our plan to State Ed and their department for Smart Schools Bond Act, for which they'll review our plan and hopefully approve it within a reasonable amount of time. Typically, plan approvals have taken upwards of 18 months, and in one case, almost 2 years. But we're hopeful that we'll get this one a little bit faster. Next slide, Art. We went through this. This is exactly what I just said. Next slide, Art. This is just a quick history of what we spent money on already. In 2016, we had approval for Smart Schools Plan number 1. We installed interactive panels in our classrooms, a number of them, not all of them. And we installed door hardening locks. They were intrusion prevention locks on all of our classroom and facility doors across all of our schools. That plan was completed, or that purchase plan was completed, and we were fully reimbursed for the cost by the state. At no point in time do we need a voter referendum for this plan unless the expenditures in our plan go beyond what our allocation for Smart Schools Bond Act money is. Smart Schools Bond Act number 2 was security vestibule. One can see them. You go up to any school with the exception of Wappingers Junior High School, which already had a vestibule, and you can see the addition of vestibules. That was done via the expenditures from this money. We did plan number 3. Was $481,560. That was for Chromebooks. It was a pretty simple, straightforward plan. We're hoping that one was approved relatively fast. We're hoping that this one will be approved relatively fast as well. Smart Schools Bond Act number 4 was most recent. We had approval for that. We got an additional 185 interactive display boards for our classrooms, as well as Wi-Fi equipment for our junior high schools. And we have a supplemental plan that says that's still pending. That's to try and get reimbursed $27,000, which is the cost it was for us to have those 185 boards mounted. And we're hoping to get Smart Schools Bond Act to go ahead and reimburse us for that. If at the end they decide not to reimburse us, we are very happy with the work that was done, and the boards got installed in a very quick amount of time, faster than what we would have been able to do in-house. So the next couple slides, Art will talk about what our plan is for, and let me just preface it by, just real quick about expenditures and the thought of doing a one-to-one initiative in our elementaries for all of our district, for entire district K-12, for example. Actually, there's been a lot of talk. The district started off this year by doing one-to-one in our junior high schools, and the plan was every year to add a grade level as we were able to afford, so that way any student goes from 6th grade into 7th grade would be the first year that they get a one-to-one device initiated by the district, and they would keep that one-to-one device all the way through graduation. This year, the junior high started off, we were able to fund mainly, due to COVID and everything that we had learned from our remote learning experiences last year, we were able to fund 2 grade levels. And those students in grades 7 and 8 have had a lot of success in using the devices in the classroom. We've learned a lot. We need to make some adjustments, but it's overall been very successful, and we're ready to expand it. With the introduction of some of the federal money from COVID, we're looking to expand it faster than what our original plan was. So rather than doing one-to-one for just 1 grade level next year, we're going to try to go and do one-to-one for just about all grade levels. We still have to focus on what it looks like for K1 or K1-2, what kind of devices make the most sense for those students. But for the most part, we should be able to do Chromebooks in most of our elementaries all the way up to graduation if we're able to get that funding approved through the federal fund expenditures. And with that, we know that we are going to need better Wi-Fi infrastructure in our elementary buildings, because if we tried to do a one-to-one right now in our elementary buildings, they would not work because our Wi-Fi is not suitable for that use. So Art, why don't you take it away for the next couple of slides and tell everyone what the expenditures are going to be proposed.
All right, thank you, Darren. Let me just move to the next slide here. We have 2 parts to our Smart Schools Bond Act number 5, which is actually very similar to number 4 in the fact that we're going to focus yet again on our interactive displays. as well as our Wi-Fi infrastructure, which you'll see in a moment. The district would like to complete our interactive panel implementation by replacing the remaining 150 boards. Right now, most of those boards out there are older smart boards, projectors that were purchased in the early 2000s. They have served their life. However, at this point, they are not as functional as they once were, and that equipment is in desperate need of repair. We have replaced over 450 of those boards already over the past 5 years. This would be our third implementation, our third project of those interactive boards. We find that this newer technology, which is more similar to a large screen TV with touchscreen capabilities, they last much longer. They don't have the same quirks or issues that the other boards had with losing touch, sound, or dimming like the old projector bulbs did on us. Cost per board is approximately $2,600. This price has actually come down over the past several years, which has been great because we've been able to do more with less money. There is an allocation for private and parochial schools of $25,222. Part B of this plan would be to expand the wireless network to our elementary buildings. As Darren had mentioned, our wireless networks in those elementary buildings is about 10 years old. We have not expanded those wireless access points in those elementary buildings yet. We have done the high schools and most recently the junior high schools. We're going to run along the same plans, which will allow us to install access points in every classroom as well as the hallways. Right now, the only access points are in the hallways. So once you go into the classrooms, especially depending on the age of the building, what the building's constructed out of, the signal drops off very drastically, and then it just makes it very difficult. This would allow us to ensure that the students have connectivity so that when they are using technology in the classroom, they are not having lagging or any other issues. As we have mentioned in the past, we use the Smart Schools Bond Act to allow us to create projects or complete projects in a much faster process than we have been able to do with our regular budgets. This here gives you just a whole breakdown. So you see plans 1 through 4, the $4.2 million. Darren had also mentioned that the amendment that we are working on right now for the installation of the previous project. What has been discussed this evening is for a total of $786,880, which will leave us with a balance still remaining of $336,402.17. We have the email address here for anybody that would like to submit questions over that 30-day mark before our next review, which I think Lisa was March 14th.
Perfect. All right, thank you. I think we can exit the slideshow and see if anyone has any questions.
Thank you, Darren, as well as Art, for your presentation. I think it was a well done and a much more needed improvement on both issues. And get renew the new boards as well as the wireless. So I think it's a good idea. Eddie, I think you have a question.
Hey, Art. Thanks, Art. Very informative. And I'm sorry I was unable to attend that meeting. Question. The boards that we're replacing, are they considered obsolete? Is there any way to potentially repurpose them for some other use?
Yes, they are obsolete. Yes, we are trying to use them where available. More than anything, we've been working with our OT, PT, speech and language therapists to at least use the projectors in a lot of the environments to make it easier for them to work with our students. If the boards are still somewhat functional, we've been trying to repurpose them as well to help in those spaces as well.
Yeah, so just thing that dawned on me is, I don't know, is giving them to the football coaches to run film. I mean, you know, if it's a giant screen that they could utilize, you know, just again, if we're able to repurpose some of them for educational purposes, you know, even just
screens aren't that. Yeah,
you know.
That's a good thought. The screens are not that big, but you can use the projectors and back them up a long ways and find a nice blank white wall use them on
Or bring in a big white sheet, right? Okay.
I'm
All
sure
right.
trustee Sloshower meant for the athletics department, not just one team.
Are there any other
All right,
questions?
thanks.
Any other board members?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay, Keith.
Thank you. And on the presentation, it mentions that you have to support and supply to some private and parochial schools.
That's by law.
And what does that journey look like in terms of, are we purchasing them? Are we installing them?
Well, it doesn't have to be, they pick the technology. So the private and parochial schools are notified by us as to what their allocation is based on our expenditure plan. And then they tell us. So in the past, some of them have bought Chromebooks, some of them have bought smart boards while we're buying displays. It's really just their preference and what they choose to do. And so we just become a conduit for purchasing. We purchase it and we get it, and then they usually come and pick the stuff up.
So it's pretty much a economy of scale type of thing. They trying to get a better price working with us.
Well, it's more like because of the nature of the Smart Schools Bond Act, we're required to take an allocation of our $5.2 million and apply it towards the number of students enrolled in that private and parochial school in our district. And that's their way of providing some level of equity to students who are both in public school and outside of public school.
Okay, thank you for explaining.
Darren, if they decide to order display, what do you call it? Interactive displays, we provide the expertise to install those, or they have to get it themselves?
No, and installation is optional. I mean, if they somehow are able to package it into their purchasing plan, fine. But I would say most people probably just buy the hardware because their allocation is not that much. $25,000 is across all of our private and parochial schools.
Well,
So
less than 12 displays, I believe it is.
yeah, it's not much. So they'll just take the hardware and they'll use their own staff to install it probably, or come up with some sort of side agreement that doesn't go through us.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions? With that being said, Peggy, please read the resolution.
Be it resolved that the Preliminary Smart Schools Bond Act Implementation Plan Number 5 will be posted on the district website for at least 30 days, and comments on the plan will be submitted to the email address plans@wcsdny.org. And be it further resolved that a public hearing will be conducted on Plan Number 5 on February 28, 2022. Now therefore be it resolved that the Wapanger Central School District Board of Education does hereby approve the Preliminary Smart Schools Bond Act Implementation Plan Number 5 in the amount of $786,880 as presented.
Motion? Michael,
moved.
second,
So moved.
Johnson, all those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, Alberta. Consent agenda resolution? Peggy?
Mr. Lumia?
Darren?
I'm sorry.
Mr. Lumia, I'm sorry. I
Alberta,
didn't see Kerry's vote.
Carrie? Carrie, did you?
Guys, I lost internet for a couple seconds there. It said I was unstable.
Yeah, you approved this, the resolution for the school? Yes. Peggy also went yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Alberta,
All
Peggy?
right, Darren, thank you.
Does anybody want to remove anything from the consent agenda first, John?
Marie?
I don't, but you need,
You're 100% right. Does anybody want to remove anything from the consent agenda? I doubt it, but does anybody want to remove anything?
you got to go through the process.
Go ahead, anybody? Seeing none, please, Peggy, read the consent agenda resolution.
Okay, resolved that the Board of Education does hereby approve the following consent agenda items as stated. 6.02 as amended, 6.03, 6.04, 6.05, 6.06, 6.07, 6.08, and 6.09.
So moved.
Second.
Johnson, second. Peggy, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, I don't see everybody. Please put everybody on the, can I see everybody?
Carrie,
Everybody carried. Motion unanimous. Let me see. The next thing.
Thank you, Carrie.
I'm sorry. 7.01, discussion of process for nomination of Tobosi's Board of Education. This evening, there are two individuals right now that are running for the board. We, as a board, can nominate additional individuals. That can be done at the next board meeting. So if you want somebody behind those two individuals, namely Ralph Giumento and Gully Stanford, please so indicate at the next board meeting. I believe Gully Stanford sent us a resume, which I hope all of you read, and I'm sure Ralph will do probably the same. So if anybody has any new members that they want to recommend, please bring it forward next time. All right. Any questions? All right. 7.02. Approval of new course offerings. Peggy.
Resolved that the Board of Education does hereby approve the following new courses for the 2022-2023 school year, as detailed in a memorandum from Dr. Michelle Cardwell, Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, to the Superintendent of Schools. Advanced Spanish 3 for the Heritage and Native Speaker. DCC French 201. DCC French 202.
Motion?
So moved.
Marie Johnson, Peggy second. Any discussion? I think we already heard from Dr. Caldwell. They're excellent courses. So all those in favor of those courses?
Aye.
Unanimous. 7.03, second reading of adoption policies. Peggy?
Okay, could you, thank you. Resolved that the Board of Education of the Wapato Central School District hereby approve the second reading of and adopts the following policies based upon the first reading by the board and the recommendation of the policy committee as stated. Additions are underlined and are highlighted in green. Deletions are red and strike through.
Motion. Marie
Second.
Johnson, second. Peggy. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. 7.04, first reading of policies. As I mentioned multiple times, please look at the policies at first reading, and then if you have any comments, please send them to Chairman Peggy Kellen, okay? Okay, with that being said, 8.01, are there any board member want to put anything addition to the agenda? Seeing none. 9.01, communication from the public. Alberta?
Okay, we do have some comments.
I'm sorry?
Okay, hold on, I'm bringing it up. Okay, the first comment is from Megan Dolan. She writes, as Governor Hochul fights in court to keep her school and indoor mask mandates in place, new data is out showing no difference between states with mask mandates versus states without mandates. Masks don't work. COVID cases are dropping dramatically and neighboring states are dropping their mandates. Please unmask our children. Make mask wearing optional so parents can decide what is best for their children. Governor Hochul does not possess the authority to impose such mandates. And the next comment is from Kimberly DiPilato. She writes, is the board ready to be held personally responsible for any lawsuits that may come from enforcing an unlawful mandate? And that's all the comments I have this evening.
All right, thank you very much for those comments. I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Second by Mike McFarland. All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you very much for your participation. Dr. Bunk, thanks for the presentation, and along with the rest of you. Thank you very much, and hopefully to see you soon.